submarine. Never going in one of those again. Here we are. I'm back after a year, presumably in that submarine. It's the year 2024, and my first guest of the new year, even though this was recorded in December 2023, is Alexa Thay-nohs, a composer, pianist, and educator who makes really awesome music that I enjoy very much. We talk about her roots in music, her partnership with Sean Ettlin to form Spaced Out Studios, and their latest album, The Little Bookshelf, and a bunch of other really good stuff. So let's just get right on into it.
It, and then we'll just start talking about stuff. My guest today is Alexa Thay-nohs. Alexa is a pianist, composer, producer, and instructor, and the co-founder of Spaced Out Studios alongside Sean Ettlin. Am I saying his name right?
Nailed it. Amazing.
Ettlin, yeah. She's a third-generation gamer, as per her website bio. And in your bio, you say you have more memories of your mother playing video games than your own.
That is true.
So with that being said, my first question for you is, which is the best Zelda game?
Oh, you can't start with that, man. Oh my gosh. So when I was small, the N64 was the staple of my household. My mom was just like super, super into getting every tiny little thing in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And I know you're a Majora's Mask fan. I remember like the mask in your room and everything.
There it is right there.
It's so cool. It looks so great. So for me, I think nostalgia-wise, Ocarina of Time. I mean, it for me is the perfect game, both in emotional quality and in the gameplay. Like if I ever crave playing a Zelda game, I really crave Ocarina. I was also a big fan of the Minish Cap, though. That one was pretty awesome.
Oh, okay. What was that one for? I never actually played that one.
It was a Game Boy Advance, I want to say.
Okay, yeah. All right. Well, yeah, we're on the same page as far as Ocarina. So there you go. Let's hear a brief synopsis of how you became Alexa Thay-nohs.
Oh my goodness. So I have always been a fan of music. My mom likes to tell this story where she and my dad would like go on dates to Best Buy, like because like every week, see what new CDs are coming out. Okay, this is one. This is like in the late '90s, right? So we're talking going to find, because my household is very, very musical. Like I was always brought up around music, despite the fact that neither of my parents are like trained musicians. They're just super fans. Went to concerts a lot. And so she tells a story when I was like, I don't know, maybe 2, like 1.5 or 2. They would walk around Best Buy, and every time they would pass by the pianos, my chubby little baby arm would just stick out of the cart and be like, interested, like a little magnet, what is that thing? And it was just such a consistent interest of mine that when I was maybe 4 or 5, they brought home this adorable little Casio. I want to say it was like a 76 key Casio. And it was like, it had this cute little stand and had a little LED screen where you could see what MIDI was being played through the piano. You know how those pianos kind of come with like 100 pre-built in tunes.
Yeah.
And they have that like classic
speakers.
MIDI sound. But they had a little diagram of the piano in that screen. And so when I was small, like I remember, I was probably about 5 based on the house that I remember this happening in. But I would just follow those patterns and on that screen. And that was just a super fun pastime for tiny Alexa. That was like my jam. I remember learning like a very abridged version of like the Turkish March or like Beethoven's Pathetique, second movement, I think it had, and little things like that. It just like, it was so gratifying to follow a pattern and make music. And from then I was always noodling on my piano. When 5th grade came around and we got to pick an instrument, I went toward the violin, which I played for 7.5, 8 years, like almost all the way to the end of high school.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, violin was my first like trained instrument. I didn't do lessons on that until much later in the violin career. But, as teenagers do, interests pivot and shift. So from violin, I went to guitar. I had a little hippie phase. I played a lot of acoustic guitar. And I started teaching on ukulele after I got interested in guitar. I gave my first lesson at, I think I was 15 or 16. I was teaching at a local music store to like teeny little kiddos, 3 or 4 years old. They were so sweet.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I mean, music's just always been a fabric of my existence, both as a consumer, as a maker, as a performer. And so in college, I didn't actually start as a music major because when I was in compulsory school, my grades were actually pretty gnarly. And it was always because I would rather be playing music than like doing homework.
Yeah.
And unlike the
Okay.
good kids in my school who were doing both, I was like just, bit of a degen on the academic front, which is kind of surprising if you look at my college academic record. Like you
Right,
would never
right.
put those two in the same room.
Yeah.
So when I got to my community college, because there was no way I was getting into a state school with my high school grades, they were like, well, you should. It was the weirdest thing. They didn't have like an explorers program. Like you couldn't be an undeclared major by the time I got to that school. A lot has changed in the last 10 years because I now work at the school that I'm talking about, which is fun, a little full circle. But they were like, the adults in my life were saying that I was spending too much time on music, which is fun. And I should have been pursuing something quote unquote real, concrete. You are someone who has also done music in academia, so you know how that language can be really impactful in not so great ways. I started college as a math major, but I was sneaking in music classes through like a math major stint and an accounting major stint. I got like associate's degrees in both those things, but the whole time I was taking music classes, and eventually it just hit a point where I took my first piano lesson at 20 years old. Like I had been flirting with the piano my whole life, but at 20, I really I had my first real lesson, and that's just like that's the spark. That's where everything that had led up to that moment sort of blossomed, and then everything since then has just been from that one little moment.
That's really cool because I have the next question I had was where did the creative spark take over, and that's the exact thing. That's
Yeah.
the moment right there.
100%.
Where you say like because you had the guideline or so, were you pressured by your own self or like your parents or anything to kind of go into the math accounting route? As far as practicality, was there any kind of like tug of war between you and another party, or like whether that's
yeah.
internal or your parents, or as far as like the practical use of a
Right.
post-secondary education,
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. No, that's such a great question. And I think about it a lot. My perspective at the time was I did want to legitimize my foray into college, if that makes sense. Like I wanted to, because after high school, like I mentioned,
like this
I was
is going to
kind
be
of,
worth it.
Yeah, like I was a scuffed student in high school, and actually such to the point where I had an agreement with my parents that I would front the bill for my community college education, and I would get reimbursed if my grades were good enough because I needed something on the line.
Yeah.
It was important, and because that's just kind of the person that I was at the time, and I still have shades of that to this day. I'm a chronic procrastinator. I work best under intense amounts of pressure, and so when I remember when I like cut the check, metaphorical check for the first semester, and it was a pretty significant amount. I was like, wow, okay, like this is real, and that was money that I had saved from making music, right? So on the one hand, it was actually a great thing because I was proving to myself that I could do something economically and like actually real with music money. But at the same time, I was too scared internally to pull the trigger and really make that happen. And in addition, the counseling that you receive when you first get into community college is, they have a lot of students coming in. It's hard to have a one-on-one. And like I said, a lot has changed in the last 10 years. But at the time, they basically looked at my math placement test and they're like, oh, you got into calculus. You should just do like math. Just do math. I was like, I guess I like math. Like, I'm all right. Like, it's not my favorite thing to do, but I guess I'll just say yes because I couldn't leave the room until I picked a major, basically. I was like, fine.
Well, and I imagine those people are like, they're like, well, we gotta push her into something useful,
that's kind of the thing.
That makes me wonder about like what makes it like, because I can totally see you being amazing at calculus, but I can also see you not enjoying it at all. Because like, there's things that you're good at, but like my brain is formed around this other realm of thought that I want to explore, and that it sparks joy and inspiration and all this stuff. And it's like,
that's exactly. And you know what? Honestly, I'm really grateful for this experience, having not jumped right into music for twofold. Because one, as you just described, exploring capability can be so important. Regardless of your enjoyment of it, sometimes it's just good to see what you're capable of. And for me, my relationship with math was really interesting because first semester calculus, I was like totally nailed it. I loved it. It was like my
Yeah.
favorite class. We met. It was neat. It was a 5-credit class. We met an hour every day, and that just worked for me because we had quizzes at the end of every week, tests at the end of every little segment, and
Yeah.
it worked for my brain because it was consistent. It was like a puzzle, and I was like, yes, this is great for me. But
Yeah.
when Calculus 2 and 3 came along, all of a sudden it went from 5 times a week to 2 times a week to 1 time a week. And that's
Oh.
where I realized that my capability was very heavily influenced by my exposure time. And with
Oh.
math, I could go to the learning center and to the tutoring, as much as I could, but the classroom was really where things were happening in my mind. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of a cool showing of like my student self. And also, like I mentioned, when you come from being kind of a bad student to all of a sudden feeling pressure to be a really good student, like there's certainly a learning curve of how to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I explored that in non-musical ways. My math, my accounting, all my general ed, I learned, like, I don't feel like I wasted a single minute of college, even though I was
Yeah.
there for, longer than the average bear.
Oh,
but
man.
I actually am really grateful
We're so
for that.
opposite.
Okay, wait, tell me about your experience. Like, so if you're on the opposite side, like I
Well,
would
no,
love
it's
to
your
know.
episode.
Oh,
it's
that's
your
right, sorry.
episode, but no, I just I hung out a lot.
Sure, okay.
I had
dude,
mu-
what is
I
college
was
for?
I was a music major, but I just I had like I effed around with like I took Latin my first year because I
Hell
was just
yeah.
like that's cool, and
Summon some
actually
demons.
it was actually one of my favorite courses. It turned out because like it sort of fed into my interest in like etymology behind like
Nice.
different words and Germanic languages and how they evolved and stuff, and how like different like the same word in different languages are all like rooted to the same thing. But
Yeah.
I found out I couldn't pair it with anything, so I
Oh.
went off and did like poli-sci pairs and English pairs and stuff, and was borderline not like I. It was okay. I got by because I worked hard, but
There we
did
go.
not enjoy it. But no, it's and then you're fed the idea that it's like if you as long as you work hard and you can have this you climb the ranks and so and so went and worked on a cruise ship over the summer. It's like, well, maybe I'll try that, and
Right.
and sometimes it works
Right.
out, sometimes it doesn't, but. It's interesting to hear you talk about like you're very aware of how you learn. Like it seemed like you figured out how you learn and what you're good at like early on, whereas like I'm still figuring out why is it taking me
Totally.
so long to start to use Reaper or whatever.
Actually, no,
'Cause I'm just-
I gotta tell you, just that was how I learned at that time, right? That's how
Yeah.
I learned as 17, 18, 19-year-old me. But now things
Sure.
are quite different. I tried to pick up Unity by myself pretty recently, and I was like, man, I am a fish out of water with this, and I still don't know. Is it the material itself or the lack of a classroom? Like, there's a lot. I'm with you. I still feel like I'm exploring that like every day.
I think it's to me it's like you're learning because you have to learn scripting to be able to really actually use Unity, and it's like
Right, right.
that's learning an entire language where you have to break down we're not even it's like a weird second level language where we're not even familiar. There's no verbs or nouns. It's just like this other set of rules. So I think that to me is the steep drop off. I'm not.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way I'll ever be like someone who can really script things, but I think knowing enough about it to get by as an audio person is like that's doable even for me. So it's like.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, dude,
you can,
your freaking Wise integrate or implementation. Yeah, it's kind of surprising to hear you say like, "Oh, I'm not going to script," because I just look at your stuff and I'm like, "This man knows how to script."
Well, but
probably.
like, I mean, like the Wise thing that I did was only, a lot of that was just replacing stuff. Like it would be finding where the address of a certain sound firing is, and then replacing it with, the sound that I made.
that's still cool.
But like.
though.
But even, FMod stuff, and we'll get into watching you figure out that beat mapping thing in Hair Runner.
God, I forgot about that.
Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, but
No, yeah.
yeah, it's all this stuff is like it's very like it takes a lot of time, and It's cool though. And it goes to show like the stuff that because I think you're like me where you dive into this stuff after school, after you're out of school and into the work, whatever we call workforce, whatever you want to say. Like we're all teachers and freelancers and stuff. But like the disparity, I guess, between what we learn in school and what like I guess the expectation that standard music curriculums set up for us versus what happens afterwards.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said, like I'll forgive post-secondary education to a point because they'll build my whole thing is like I went to schools where they aren't necessarily like, a school like Berkeley, for instance, who they kind of focus on business and like how to actually make money, like doing music related things, whether you go into licensing or teaching or actually performing or studio musician stuff.
Right.
Like those ones. I guess I went to the second school I went to, UNLV, like they're more kind of trying to go in that direction, but there's so much, like they have like 30, 40 years to catch up on, and like the how quickly things move with like like even the past 10 years, like how Unity and Unreal Engine and like figure like Wise Fmod, I don't even know how old Fmod is, but like my point being, there's all these things that we go out into the world and we learn, in order to maybe get a gig doing sound or music or hey, even the holy grail of finding a AAA position somewhere. You need to have all this other stuff that I just learned how to craft a jazz solo for 4 years, so I don't know anything about Fmod. I don't know anything about attenuation or blah blah blah, all this stuff that goes into game audio. But that and then hey, that's just maybe there's I could have sought out more information in the about it, like or like shopped around different schools and stuff. But like you're kind of, I'm from the generation that's just like you go to school and then you figure out like that's gonna be your ticket,
right?
And that's not to say that that's what I was thinking going to a master's degree, but I guess my point is like, how did I phrase the question? I wrote it down. Do you feel like academia can ever catch up with industry in that regard? You know what I mean? Like, and there's something to be said, because like by the time you get an Fmod class into a university curriculum, it's like they've already moved on to some other proprietary software. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I think academia has a really funny way of constantly getting in its own way. Right? Yeah. Because they will hire like some of the most capable human beings on the planet, but those people who are in the classroom and actively doing the work that the college sets out to provide to students will be just consistently held back by red tape, bureaucracy, curriculum committees, all that crap. So to answer your question, I think in an ideal setting, there's a chance that academia can absolutely get out of its own way and develop flexible curriculum that can always, adhere or adapt the new software updates, patches, whatever have you, because like you say, Fmod from year to year is going to look a little bit different. Maybe not significantly, maybe significantly. Like we don't know what's going on behind the scenes there. So we always have to be ready for it. But as it stands now, I think the purpose, when I think of my time in academia, I think it set me up to do a lot of, actually, let me rephrase. I think it set me up with a lot of the fundamentals that can be well translated into many different spheres, which is great. And I think that's really important. I think that's honestly the cultivating of your craft and knowledge in that vacuum is probably still the single most important thing that can happen. Because as you said, if the industry is constantly changing anyway, you'll probably find these things outside of school or working on your own projects. Like that's where for me, that's where the real meat and potatoes came in.
Yeah.
Case in point, like I watched my alma mater take their hand at game audio, and they did a lot of things really well. But one of the things that I felt consistently frustrated by was that when we were interacting with Unity, it was very much a drag and drop adventure, meaning that if I didn't have a project in Unity all ready to go with all of the audio already set up for me, there was no way I could really interact with it. The barrier to entry of Unity was still incredibly high after I had taken a year of those classes, because in order to make a successful project in the time that we had, they had to do a lot of the heavy lifting, right?
Yeah.
And the games they made, you can't ask them, the instructors, to make a new game every year. That's totally unsustainable. So I'm having a hard time addressing this question head on, because I feel like the answer could at some point be yes, but right now I'm not optimistic about it. But then the question is, does it have to? Right? Does it have? Does academia have to catch up with industry? And I think if we focused more on our core tenets, maybe not. I don't know. It's so hard for me to say right now. And I feel like if you ask me even like a month from now, my answer might be totally different.
Well, and I don't want you to be like slamming post-secondary education when you're an adjunct professor
not at
somewhere
all.
too. But like, no, that's a great answer, because it is like, you're developing your core. Like I view it as like this gauntlet that you have to run, and like these guys. I know so many people that have like gotten to year 3.5 of their 4-year degree, and okay, I'm gonna go tour with someone, or I'm gonna go do something else, or whatever. And it's like, just finish it. Like, just finish it.
Oh, I know. Just get the darn degree.
Like, I know it sucks, but like, just do it.
Yeah,
because it is just kind of proving like, hey, I ran this course. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It doesn't mean that I know Unity or FMUD or whatever, but it means that I had to. I survived the pressure of this.
Right.
That's what I have to kind of remind myself. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I look at it is like, when I look at my degree, right, whenever I'm having a crisis in faith or of confidence, like, oh God, what was I thinking, right? I can look at a lot of
every day at 2.
It's a daily crisis. We just get over it. We go to Starbucks and we're fine. When I look at my degree, I think, well, if I can learn XYZ, right? If I can learn orchestration, or if I can learn tonal counterpoint, then I can certainly learn Unity. And I hope that when I have that, when you have degrees to your name, that's really what it's showing, is you have the capability of learning something new, successfully completing a project or some sort of demonstration of that new knowledge, and doing that enough times to warrant a certification from a good, from some institution that says that, yes, this person is capable of all those things. And that, I think, is pretty great in and of itself. And I'm not unhappy with my post-secondary education. Like I mentioned, we know it's a flawed system, and there's nothing perfect about it. But I'm really grateful for what I learned and when I learned it, and I still think it serves me really well now. Yeah,
I can't deny that that's how I feel too. Like I'll say I'll have my dark moments where I'd be like,
oh yeah,
like look, and I didn't continue teaching this last year. Like this is the first semester in a couple of years that I haven't had any students at all at post-secondary level. And I go back to what my instructor said to me at the end of 4 years of learning how to play jazz saxophone, and I was like, well, what do I do now? And he goes, well, you could look into getting a trade.
What? You're kidding me.
I was like, yeah,
did
cool.
Did he say that
thanks.
earnestly? Was that a serious suggestion?
Well, and look, I went to school in the woods in Canada, and
feral Uncle Spicer.
Yeah, feral jazz students. No, but like we have. It's basically like, and someone on cruise ships really kind of pointed this out. Like when I was thinking about going on back on land and doing a master's degree, it's like, well, do you really want to be this person that just perpetuates this cycle of like student goes to school who then go, like I had there was one professor at the school that I went to, we have ties to North Texas, that went to the school that I went to, went and did a master's degree at North Texas, and then came directly back to teach at the school that he left. So he never left academia. Sure. So I kind of like, I used that became my example of like, well, what's the point of this? Like am I gonna? Because then I started feeling this urge to like, well, I need to like build something that I'm gonna be proud of, right? And like, when you're going through those degrees, like your heroes are your professors, so it's like,
yes,
I would love to be a professor. And that became my thing. It's like, well, that could be the end goal. Yeah, you get your steady paycheck, you get your health care, and you have this just solid foundation, and then you can go and gig and do all this stuff. And then
Right.
that after doing a master's degree, it quickly became like I don't want to do that. Like it just evaporated. Like this thing that I held on to for years and years was like I don't want to do that. And it kind of grappling with that was like interesting because then you shift into sound design and stuff. But
right. And
but
that,
look, and it's Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's just that huge upset to sort of like all of your expectations and everything that you like you said held on to. I mean, that must have been really intense. But like here you are on the other side of it with like this fantastic, like I don't know. Can I call it an enterprise? Is that cool? Like it just you
not
have
yet,
so,
not yet.
Okay,
we're getting there.
Close.
We're getting there.
Okay, we're getting Like I mean,
sure.
All of the things that you produce, all of the videos that you make, all of your content, I am just like so blown away. Like every time you post something, I'm like, man, dude, look at this guy. Like he's out there
checks
doing
in the
it.
mail.
And
Your
I
checks
feel like,
in the mail.
thank you. No, but like I feel like I'm a bit of your foil because I did that exact thing that you described. I went to I went to my community college. I went to my college after that, my 4-year institution, got a master's at that same 4 years institution, and while I was finishing my master's, got a job at the community college from the beginning. You know what I mean? Like I haven't left that circle, but I right now am feeling really happy about that. Right? I don't know if that happiness will stay forever, but it's certainly here now, and I'm soaking it in and glad for it. But I don't I could see very easily how it could turn into something different, how those feelings could just pivot.
And I mean it's you're talking about getting an education in a creative industry that is saturated entirely with really good people, and what we don't really talk about in academia, and perhaps because we're not aware of it, like because like when that's kind of like what I liked about UNLV is like they talk about like so-and-so's off touring with this or like playing the Brooklyn Bowl or whatever in LA, and like it's people would be like, oh, the teacher should be here in the classroom teaching us. It's like, no, man, I want to learn from somebody who's out there doing stuff, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's not like any of the teachers like missed anything. It's just like, but like that was the kind of draw to that. And so like I feel this weird like there's a dissonance between what you're telling a first year composition student what is important to know, and it's like, well, I don't really even know that, you know, because like so and so is successful because they've been playing that gig for 20 years and they're holding on to it until they die, right? It's like so
and
but
fortune definitely plays a role. Like it just and I think that's true in many industries, but I feel like it's especially true in creative endeavors. Like I feel very much that the number of times I hear like, oh, like I just happen to know somebody, I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I feel like I hear that exponentially more on the musical side of the field than CPAs or whatever.
Well, but then I honestly like I think that the things to be gained from that are any kind of gainful employment I've gotten has been from recommendations of people who actually know me and work with me.
Oh, right.
And
exactly.
like I came out here and started gigging with this wedding band, and no one had ever heard me play a note. Or the guy that hired me hadn't heard me play at all, but it's because I had a little bit of a name for myself, knowing that this guy can play and he's cool hang. Like that's those two things or whatever. So it's like teach kids that, well, it's cool. Yeah. Like learn how to figure out. Like people will now approach me for sound design stuff. Like I'll post something and someone will be like, "Hey, that was really cool. Like how do I do what you're doing or whatever?" And I want to shout don't because it's hard. Run away. Go and do math and accounting. But no, it's like I realized like, oh, it is actually really good to just go and the advice I'm giving people is go and find like 5 mentors that you send your stuff to and get feedback on it. And just the fact that you're like actually just do the work, and that's honestly what education can give us is the grit to just finish it. Just finish it, man. Young people don't finish anything. That's the real difference between people who get gigs and who don't are just
Right.
these people who finish stuff, you know?
Right.
I want to pivot from that because
Sure,
I don't
yeah.
want it to be this is a whole other discussion, but
No, yeah,
and who knows
yeah.
how much I'm going to edit out.
No, yeah, please.
I just want to talk about where we met, and I'm skipping around. I'm doing this out of order, but
Sure.
So we did the Ludum Dare. Was it 52? The game jam.
Yes. Yeah. 52.
So, yeah.
Last year. Or like
was
earlier
that
this
last
year.
year?
Almost a year ago.
Wait, no, it wasn't earlier this year.
Wasn't it?
2023. It's 2022, wasn't it?
Oh God.
Wait. Oh, how does
Wait,
time
hang on.
passing
We're gonna
slower
pull
than
out
I
the
think?
freaking stenographer. Because wait a minute.
Oh, God.
I thought it was earlier this year because it started on my birthday. So I thought,
I think it was
thought
2
that
years
this is
ago,
this week.
Alexa.
oh my God, what happened to this year? It just slipped through my fingers. Oh my
know.
God, I'm getting my hair, all of it just turned gray. It just I
Yeah.
am a shriveled little
Yeah.
prune. My bad.
Yeah.
Fake news. Anyway.
No, it's it's for real though. It does. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It gets worse as you get older. No,
Okay.
but no. So we met at the Ludum Dare 52 game jam. So we were part of this gigantic audio team, which is
Yeah.
rare for a for a game jam.
Yes.
That's also where we met Jeremy Scott Olson, who was in episode 12 of this podcast, the one right before this. Oh, you're lucky number 13, by the way.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
I knew Jeremy from before that. I knew Jeremy.
Yeah.
From,
Okay. So then, and I had joined this team of other people that like then found you guys with the Sleepy Donut people who, like, you had worked with them.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Evan and people on that team. But then you had also, so you met Jeremy. How did you meet Jeremy before that?
So this is actually a really funny story. My mom is a recurring character in this podcast, and she met Jeremy in high school. So my mom and Jeremy are high school friends.
Okay,
And
yeah.
when I
Yeah,
started
that's right.
pursuing, and Jeremy's, his career is so awesome.
Yeah.
It's so like he's just a stellar human being.
He
So
really
if
is, yeah.
a listener here has not listened to Jeremy's episode, you should absolutely do that. And so just sort of contextualize what I'm saying here. But basically, when I started pursuing music, for realsies in college, my mom, I forget exactly how it happened, but basically, I think my mom was like, "Do you want to talk to Jeremy and just chat up a person who does sound and music professionally?" And I was like, "Absolutely, I do." And it was over COVID, and we had a Zoom meeting, and it was a quintessential Zoom meeting where, I think my video stopped no fewer than 18 times, and there was a lot of "Oh, I'm sorry, could you say that again?" because it was all garbled and robotic because it's freaking classic Zoom meeting. But we had a great chat, and I basically got the opportunity to ask him how did your academia or how did your academic career serve you or not serve you in the industry that you have now, and your incredible all of the achievements that you have now? Do you tie that to your degree, or was it in spite of your degree? And he was so kind. He just took this big chunk of time out of his day to talk to effectively a rando, right, daughter of high school friend, whatever, right? And then we kept in touch from there. And so I think that was summer of 2020. And then in spring of 2021, he suggested that I do two things. One was the 7 days of VGM challenge. And I'm so blanking on who runs it. He's so nice, but it's the Video Game Music Academy or something like that.
Yeah, Music Academy, yeah.
Yeah. And then we did our first Ludum Dare in April 2021. And that was just it's the beginning of...
What game was that again?
That was Asterisk.
Asterisk, yes. Okay.
Yes.
And that's the one with the
that
little
was-
spaceman guy, right?
Yeah, the little spaceman. Oh my gosh. Yeah, our artist for that was incredible. She did just such amazing work. I've been very lucky with the artists in all these games. Right? Hair Runner?
Yeah.
My God.
Oh man, yeah. We'll talk about it, but yeah.
But yeah, so Jeremy is now, I'm so lucky to call him not only a friend, but also, he's very much a strong mentor figure in my life as well. I've been really lucky, and you as well, being a Bad Self Media folded artist in the collective. It's just been amazing to watch that grow and be part of, sort of have any hand in that is super fortunate. So yeah, that's Jeremy.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so we did that. We did this, like you said, Hair Runner. We have this amazing splash art. I talked about it in, I think, the Reflections episode before this. which was
Yeah.
I'm coming off of like a year break from this podcast, so I have to go back and listen to things. But yeah, no, amazing art. Like that was one of those things where I was like, okay, this has to be. I got to put this on my portfolio. It looks awesome.
Oh yeah.
But like we all vibed together really well.
We
Like
did.
it was really cool, and like not to just make this about Jeremy, but see as a whole
please.
episode. But like I did, like I popped into a Discord meeting, and he just like, hey, what's up, man? And then just like it was as if I had known him for years, and it was the first time
Yes.
talking to him. It was really cool. But
Yeah,
and then like
totally.
combined with you, and then everybody. Like you interface with people really well, and I just have a note here that you impressed the hell out of me over the course of that jam, because it was like you're saying you work better under pressure, and that's definitely true because I've seen that firsthand. Because you were like. We're like, oh, we don't know how to do this, and you're like, all right, so, and then you're just like Googling, and you're doing this one says this, and this part says this, and I think we could do it like this, and you're just like smashing all these roadblocks out of the way, and just like have this patience and level-headedness that is very like, I was like, I need to get more of that in my life. So I aspire to that. So
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I credit a lot of that to my partnership with Sean, because if
Yeah.
I couldn't rely on someone else doing some more of that heavy lifting,
Sure.
I would just totally crumble into a puddle. But the fact that I knew that Sean was so like, I know the things I can rely on Sean for, and we feel
Yeah.
very much like a singular unit, then I kind of have that brain space afforded back to me to be like, okay, like we're just going to attack this problem and, have all the comfort and knowing that Sean is just making all the right decisions while I'm not even in the room.
Absolutely. No, and we and I don't want to make it all about post-secondary education, but
No, please, yeah.
I
Bring it back.
developed this thing of like, I need to be able to do every single thing. And that's what and I've
yes.
literally heard that. And lots of people
Yes.
listening have probably heard, you need to be able to do every single thing.
Yes.
And what I've realized after meeting Adam Brown, who sort of completes my game audio skills, like he does all this technical shit that like I just don't like and I'm not good at, but he is really good at it. And like now we've worked together on a couple of different projects, and it's like we know each other. It's similar, I think, to what you and Sean have. Can you talk about? So anyway, my point in saying that is like that's something that you don't have to be ashamed of.
Oh,
like
no.
getting help and getting someone who you trust and working with people, because that's what a company is,
Right.
So how did you meet Sean, and what are those skills, and how do they overlap or don't overlap?
Absolutely. Okay, you ready for this? This is almost
let's do it.
This is almost ridiculous. This is verging on ridiculously cute. But Sean and I met in our second semester music theory course.
Cute.
And now, some years later, I now teach in that classroom where we met.
There you go.
I know,
Adorable.
it's ridiculous. But no, like Sean and I met early on, but we didn't really like connect with each other. We were very opposite students. I was like Hermione Granger, and he was like the dude in the back who was only there like because he had to be to start, right? And then Sean really hit his academic stride in our music program as well, and that's where also I was just developing, like being an actually solid student, not just showing up and expecting a grade, but like actually getting into like wanting the knowledge, wanting the practice, putting in the extra time and the extra work. Like that was where my dedication just started to really blossom. So we sort of interfaced with each other lightly. And when we took a semester of choir together is where we really hit it off. And we were, just chatting up a storm. I think the joke is that a lot of people knew that we were like heading toward dating before either of us did. We were just like it was really cute because we were just like thick as thieves. We were hanging out all the time, getting food, and it was sweet. It's like your quintessential like budding relationship. And we did open mics together at his mom's ice cream shop, which is pretty adorable. I know.
All right.
So it's cute. They had this really lovely like sound setup because the ice cream shop also doubles as a church. Which is kind of cool, like a kind of a vineyard come as you are church. And so their music person, director, I don't quite know exactly the title, but they had a really nice sound system. And so you could plug in, have a nice little amp sound and good microphone and good space. And so once a month, pre-COVID, they were hosting open mics. And, when COVID hit, everything changed. That person moved away and all this. So I don't know how often they do those open mics now. But Sean and I were singing a lot because of choir. And so he played guitar, I played ukulele, or obviously other things, of course. But I had a ukulele on me because I was still teaching that semi-regularly. And we would just hang out and sing, and it was really cute. We made a little set list. We did cute little covers. And so that was kind of outside of CSM. And then when we really, our professional relationship, I think our working relationship really started in our electronic music classes, because he was already finished with those classes by the time I had done by the time I started my first year. And so when I needed help on something, I could consult him. And I don't know if you know this about me or if you could tell this about me. I'm a little particular. And okay. People have said that I'm a little bossy. I'm not going to affirm or
Hermione
deny
Granger
these
vibes.
little Hermione Granger vibes. And it's I was a little hesitant to work on someone else musically, or with someone else musically. And at the time, I think it was a facet of ego.
I'll just say that you're not. That's not a bossy. That's an artist thing. I guess I still haven't broken out of that barrier. Yeah. You know what I mean? Working with you guys on that is someone else is writing music. I'll just write the menu music, I guess. But then I heard your guys, and I'm like, this is really good.
Oh my god! I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that was my exact feeling. I turned to Sean when I heard we had another composer. I was like, I don't know if I like this. But at the time, when I was younger, it was a facet of ego. It was very much I don't want to be stuck with somebody, blah blah blah. But
sure.
When I was with
you don't want to share the
opposite.
credit. You want to be the person. You don't want to be one of the people. Yeah.
Top dog. Exactly. I very much had there was and of course when I think if we were to therapy this, I'm sure it actually comes down to insecurity, that top dog, that need to have that. And I actually was feeling a little insecure when you came into the project. So I was I don't want to have someone observe me while I'm doing the process. I just want to do the process and be have only the good parts shown. I don't want to, it's like hiding a messy room in my closet almost when somebody comes in.
Yeah. And that's, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no. So that feeling, exactly as you described, it just dissolved when I heard your music, because I was like, holy shit, this guy is so good. I don't know what I was worried about. This is great.
You're far too kind, but it is the type of thing where you have to just, and that's something that I've learned from reaching out to mentors and stuff with the sound design thing. It's you just come to it humble, and it doesn't matter that you have a master's degree in music. It doesn't matter anything. It matters what your music sounds like, and going and being a part of that project, and then going and being on a label with you guys. We get to hang out next to it's less about sharing credit and more look at these awesome people that I get to share this spotlight with,
That's exactly how Sean and I feel about having you as our first album.
Mutual.
Our
definitely
first,
mutual.
Yeah.
There's a good segue there. Our first album together, Sleepy Donut Jams,
yes.
Which again, it feels like I just kind of slipped in under the radar and you guys did all the work, because you have it's three. I'm looking at it right now. It's three games that you did with the Sleepy Donut Jams is the studio, and it's Asterisk, Department of Demise, and Hair Runner. All these three games done for these jams. And it's basically an OST of all those, because they're short games, and so it's not there'll be 4. I think Hair Runner was 4 tunes, and then the Victory Stinger, Defeat Stinger, or whatever. But I got to do the menu music for Hair Runner, and then you guys did all the actual work, because you had to figure out this beat mapping shit.
Oh, that's right.
I just want to put this in perspective for everyone listening, is that there's we say we did this thing together. It's I was just kind of there, and I made the front door sign or something.
Oh my gosh.
where and I've worked hard on that thing, but it's you were in there figuring it, all your tunes had to be the same BPM to match up with these animations that were happening in time with the music. And I just want you to talk about that for a minute and just like, was that the first time you had done that kind of thing?
Oh,
it was
yeah.
all in F mod, but yeah.
Yes, very much so. And I, funny enough, I can't even take so much of the credit for hacking and slashing as you described earlier, because if I recall correctly, it was actually Jeremy found like the ultimate fix. Like I was definitely doing a lot of trial and error to make this happen.
Right.
And basically when we're talking about the tracks, what was supposed to happen in the build, and we refined it after the Ludum Dare was initially published, because there was a bit of a trouble with it because it's pretty complex. But the idea was that in Hair Runner you are a bunny and you are fighting vegetables as you do.
Yeah.
And there was supposed to be a moment where these vegetables would have an attack that was rhythmically based, right?
Yes.
So it could be like the attack for the onion might have been 1 and 2 and whatever, right? And so we wanted to develop tracks that accentuated those rhythmic elements of those attacks. And so instead of having a sound design thing where it was like the bullets or the projectiles making those sounds, we just wanted the soundtrack to illuminate those beat patterns. And so what we had to do is this huge checkerboard of things. So there were 3 different combat levels, which, by the way, I can I circle back to the menu theme? Michael, I think the reason
Yes.
you ended up doing the menu theme is because Sean and I had such bad writer's block. We're like, we can't do this. We need to, Michael, please. Like I was in a state of crisis because
Nice.
writer's block at that time and I were not as friends as we are now. Actually, no, it's still my arch nemesis. I'm not friends with my writer's block. I've just accepted it.
Yeah,
right?
don't be.
But yeah, anyway, so circling all the way back, sorry, small tangent. So there were 3 different levels of intensity of the baseline music, right? Your level 1, 2, and 3. And so for each of those level 1, 2s, and 3s, we had to make a different track that accentuated the carrot pattern and the onion pattern and the cabbage pattern. And so if you're doing the math, like it's definitely adding up. And Sean and I could not like initially agree on actually how to make that happen because I wanted it to be percussive and he was like, well, maybe we can just bring up an instrument, and that ended up being the winner. It was really a game of mixing. So from the musical perspective, it was like all orchestration and leveling, and then from the F mod perspective, it was all like checkerboarding and transitioning, and it was such a sprint to do that. And of course, I'm a sprinter, not a runner, so that made good sense to me. Like I said, always working under pressure, that's fine. But I work under pressure when I'm best, when I'm really equipped, right? If I need to write an essay at the last minute, oh man, don't even worry about it. It's the best essay you've ever read. If I have to write music last minute, don't even worry. It's going to be great. But when I have to learn something under pressure, it's a very different story. And so that actually was sort of the bane of my Hair Runner. It was just like, why isn't this working? Why is Fmod so complicated? And now, again, grateful to have the experience and really excited to delve back into that project and maybe pull from it for something in the future.
You touched on like what game jams are like, it's this weird boot camp we put ourselves through. We did fairly well. I mean, we got a certain audio score because of just like, well, like just sheer numbers of audio people like working on it. Hey,
oh my God, we had an
who
orchestra.
knew? Yeah, you have a bunch of people all doing good work, and it turns out pretty well. So yeah, I mean, I guess so. Going back to Sean a little bit, like, do you consider what do you consider your like skill sets, and how do they like is he covering drums and like you're doing like the melodies and stuff, or is it
that's
like,
almost exactly right?
Yeah,
I mean,
okay. I want to say I remember that from before.
Yeah. And it's really funny because as we work more together, that those lines definitely get blurred, because every time he does something on the drums, I'm like, I need you to explain exactly what you just did, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to know, I want to learn and be able to do this for myself. And then also, the more we kind of exist in each other's musical spaces, the more we experience music outside of our comfort zones, or like listening to new things every day.
Exactly. It makes you better as an individual working together with someone like that.
It does, exactly. 100%. And so when we think about the jobs, like it used to very much be, I used to think of it like I could do, sort of the harmonic skeleton, right? And a solid melody to go over that. And then Sean was very much like the drums, the orchestration, the timbre. And now it's very much like our Venn diagram went from having kind of a small intersection to a much larger intersection, because then I started exploring more synth and sound design. So now I have a bit more of a hand in the timbre. He has been really on a classical kick, both as, practicing his own piano chops and just listening. So his harmonic language is definitely shifted from that a little bit, which is really cool.
Sure.
And so we're constantly meeting in the middle. But I think at the end of the day, I still consider Sean very much like our orchestrator. I feel like in our most recent album, I was very much the like harmonic, melodic, like all of the piano that you hear is my performance. And that was really what I take the most hold of.
Which album is this?
The Little Bookshelf.
Yes. Okay,
yes,
good. Because
yes.
I want to talk about that.
Totally.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like, this stuff, I listened to the whole thing last night.
Oh, thank you.
Definite, like, is it safe to say, like, Lena Raine vibes a little bit? Like, you know, Celeste. I think
a huge compliment.
Part of it, and I mean, like, you definitely have, like, the whole French Impressionism thing going on, too, and, like, Debussy and stuff. But, like, I think it's also just like you're saying timbre, like you're layering acoustic piano into like this electronic stuff, and it's got a very, very distinct kind of identity. This album. What just before I go into it, like what is the description says inspired by Alexa's treasured collection of her childhood books, which I really liked, but. Like, so what brought the idea for this album around?
Oh, my goodness. So Sean and I were offered this awesome opportunity by Monochrome Motif Records in the United Kingdom. It was one of those, we talked about this earlier with like chance meetings and fortune and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Back when Twitter was Twitter, I was definitely trying to cultivate a profile for myself on that platform because Jeremy had suggested, you know, this is where the game audio people are. Like, you should totally get connected. And I'm not super gifted at social media. And so for Twitter, it was like very confusing. But I had developed this little profile. And so we happened to just get found. We get discovered.
There you go.
We were offered to write a full album. And so our draw and sort of maybe our direction was really that we were classically inspired electronic music, right? And so cinematic, like
That's
things
exactly,
of that nature. And so initially Sean and I had a number of ideas for the album, and we just kind of couldn't congeal on one. It was tough. It was because even though we had a pretty concrete direction, there were so many ways that could take form and manifest that it was getting hard to distill it into one idea. But I was a bookworm as a kid, and I wish I was more now as an adult. I guess I do. I'm very fond of reading. I always have been. And so that collection of books that he's talking about, I can see it from my desk right now. It's on the top shelf of my bookshelf, and they're all kind of collected together. And I ordered Sean, I thrifted him a bunch of those titles. So that would be like The Little Prince, Alice in Wonderland, and Through the Looking Glass, and let's see, a couple others that of course I'm now blanking on, but The Last Unicorn, of course.
Okay.
So I reread these as my inspiration for the album because I wanted to draw from something that wasn't necessarily musical inspiration. Like I didn't want to write.
Yeah.
And of course it ended up sounding a lot like you said, French Impressionist, because that's just sort of my language in music right now is I'm very, very into that sort of appeal, that sort of sheen, that haze on the piano is something I've been really exploring, and really just in love with. But I didn't want to just listen to music. I wanted to pull from more. So I actually read to Sean. I read him The Little Prince over Discord.
Just when you thought it couldn't get more adorable.
What can I say? It's not a competition, but if it was, we would win. It's not, it's
absolutely.
Neither here nor there.
100%. 100%.
But really, I mean, it was such a treat to have all of this musical inspiration from literature. And Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was there too. It was in the fold, and we deliberately, of course,
It's because of the title of one of the tracks. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're so right. I'm so glad that like those references are so, attainable and easy to stumble across. Like it just makes
for
me
our
so
listener,
happy.
This tune is Mixed by River. I was like, that's definitely a Willy Wonka reference. Because you have and this tune is like this swishy, like you have this water effect. That's really, really cool. Very, very cool. Sorry, continue.
Thank you. No, please. That's a huge compliment. I loved working on that piece. That's one of my favorites, actually.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so we read these books and it was such a treat to rediscover them. And then as I thought about translating the literature into music, we had such good conversations about like, well, how can we talk about the Little Prince's departure from Earth? How can we talk about the snake? How can we talk about in Willy Wonka, like, should it be carefree and bubbly or should it be a little creepy? Because you're never like, I saw a meme
It
once
is a little
where-
creepy, isn't it? Yeah, it's this weird like
Yeah.
underlying darkness of like when they're in the tunnel and Gene
yeah.
Wilder is like freaking out, you know? That
I-
scared a lot of kids.
It did. And so that's why I avoided the movie, because I was like, I really want to just touch down on the literature only and then get my feeling for that. But of course, like with something as iconic as the Pure Imagination, that major seventh, that was
Yeah.
a staple
Yeah.
in Mixed by River.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Right. I mean, it had to be. And it's really funny because when there was a meme I saw about the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka, and it was something to the effect of like his portrayal worked so well because you weren't ever convinced that he wasn't just going to let one of the kids fucking die.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the fizzy lifted drinks. It's like you put
yeah.
a giant like spinning razor sharp blade at the top, and there's this kid floating. Like, oh my god, what is this movie?
And when I was reading the book, what's really funny is I don't know if you've read the book recently.
I haven't, no.
If you haven't, it's a solid, lunchtime read.
Okay.
It really is. I felt like it was just Roald Dahl's like loathing, I suppose, or like his diatribe against television
Okay.
for children.
Yeah.
That's all
Okay.
it is. He's just like, TV sucks. Here's how it's ruining children. Let's talk
Yeah.
about it in a chocolate factory. I'm like, all right,
He's like, well, let's see, what else sucks? Chewing gum, hate that.
Yeah. Get that shit out of here.
Yeah.
It was all this to say when I was pulling, it was really fun because we had so much humor to draw from and so much like sometimes I feel like when you're reading literature designed for the grown, educated population, there's almost an air about it like, you are reading this because you are very smart. And so we are going to put things that make you feel very smart. And there's like these like an artifice almost behind some of the things that I've read lately. And it's just like to go back to just children's literature was honestly so refreshing. Like creatively, and I'm someone who also is
Interesting,
very fond of writing. It's amazing how much beautiful prose can be in a book that is, in the kids' shelf at Barnes & Noble. Like it's actually kind of astounding.
Well, it's all accessible, right? It doesn't have to be not accessible to be good, too. Like that's interesting.
Exactly. So that was really fun, and I just it was a treat to make music that of things that were so important to me. That was also sort of a paralyzing agent, though. I will say is I think I had put so much emotional stock into it that the writer's block was you get writer's block every so often, right? Or maybe like every project, or like you get a little stuck. But when I would get stuck with this, it felt much heavier.
Okay.
So on the one hand, I think we made a really good product in spite of that. But on the other, it was definitely like it was a good learning experience of like, sometimes you just got to make the music and just make sure it's good music, if that makes sense, and not worry about like every single tiny emotional detail behind it. Because honestly, if I wasn't talking about it with you, like who would, I mean, we wrote a PDF and I've written about it, but like if you're just listening to the music, you're not going to pick up on those things, right? There's nobody telling you like, hey, this is emotionally important or whatever. You know what I mean?
When you write music, are you hearing it in your head beforehand, or are you hashing it out with your fingers, basically?
That's a great question. That so changes project to project. I feel like a lot of the Little Bookshelf, it was kind of like the genesis would be mental, right? Or like singing, as you say, like I would definitely think of a melody.
Yeah.
But when it came to, so a lot of the pieces are just long form improvisations. Mixed by River is a long form.
Okay.
Yeah, so Mixed by River is a long form
That surprises
improvisation
me.
that we trimmed, cut, made it presentable.
Yeah.
I think that one originally had like 7 minutes worth of music. And
wow,
I think that's
okay.
a 5.5 minute track. And the White Queen and Queen Alice were actually all recorded in one take, and we split it into 2 different pieces.
All right on. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in the kind of idea, and it's hard to put this on a listing, and I didn't want to be a huge pain in the ass about it for the record label, but the first 3 are what I consider like the Looking Glass miniatures, because they're all about Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass specifically, which is my favorite part of the book. It's been my favorite story since I was small.
Can I just say, like, you completely, like, Through the Dark Wood, like, Yeah, it's just you captured the storybook element, the vibe that you were going for very well in it. I think.
Thank you so much. That's a huge compliment. And and that one is very much like my love letter to Schumann,
Sure.
to Schubert. It's
Yeah,
very much
yeah.
that kind of almost Mendelssohnian in that it's almost a song without words at certain times.
Yeah.
And that was sort of when I wrote that specifically, I was let's see, at this point I was teaching at the California Conservatory. And I would have these breaks between my lessons, and I would just, noodle at the piano as you do. And for some reason, I just couldn't really get this little tune out of my head. I was just like, I would circle and spin on that. And I got worried because there was a vocal teacher next to me. I'm like, oh God, she must just be so sick of hearing this at this point. But then again, I'm next to a vocal teacher, so like, it's fine. But all this to say, yeah, I was just really like, I was playing a lot of Mendelssohn and Schumann at the time. So
Yeah.
this is very much a direct reflection of that. And I wanted to kind of explore pastiche and not feel ashamed about it. I feel like there's oftentimes in academics, you're really supposed to find your own voice and be your own person. And I feel like I had done that quite well, at that point. And this time I just wanted to explore pastiche without the guilt. I wanted to just see if I could sound like somebody else for a little while. And I think it's a great exercise.
That's amazing because it is funny to think of, and I had this conversation of this sort of split between jazz and classical in academia, where a lot of, especially in the States, like a lot of schools have a very developed classical programs. They have wind orchestra and whatever, all these different ensembles and they, all these different ways of becoming a purveyor of dead music. But like awesome. And look, jazz is the same thing, just a little bit more recent. But like the kind of assumption that I went in and what a lot of people think of is like jazz, you improvise, you do all these, you're free, and then classical, you're more constrained. When it's the opposite, because the example I found in the saxophone studio was these classical saxophone students were doing these etudes where you have all this room to interpret and embellish and blah, 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 make into a your own thing, where in jazz we're doing literally the parallel assignment that was presented in this one class was the jazz students all going out and doing a transcription where they're trying to sound exactly the same as the person on the recording. Tone, inflection, everything, right?
Absolutely.
And so it was this interesting like flip-flop of like, okay, that's the opposite of what I thought,
Yeah.
But like, and then
That's a really
just
good point.
you saying like I wanted to sound like someone else, like that's the skill that I've developed the most after leaving school, I think, is taking how do I make this sound like a Hans Zimmer track as much as I can, as much as is in my capabilities, or I want this to sound like Danny Elfman or whatever. I want this to sound like Lana Rain,
Right.
And it's the process of going in and trying to mimic something. You're dissecting what the actual essence of the music is. It's this chord progression going at this tempo with this many leaps in the melody or whatever.
Yes.
And all the little technical things, but it's all these little kind of less technical things that you discover through just trying to mimic somebody, and that absolutely strengthens your own product.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of my favorite classes I ever took in college was 20th Century Techniques with Dr. Sabi, Dr. Ben Sabi of SF State. The assignment that we would do, it was a weekly assignment where we would take a composer that we were studying and sound like that composer in our assignment.
Yeah.
Like do exactly what you just described in the classroom setting. And I credit that assignment with just how I think of doing certain pieces of music now, like Through the Dark Wood. Sean also did that with Hagrid's Throne Room. So Hagrid's Throne Room is all Sean. That is, I literally did not touch that. That is his track. That's his baby.
Oh, okay.
And
that's track
he
5
did that
on
with
the album.
Bach's Chaconne. And so he took Bach's Chaconne, he transplanted. Now it's a little bit different because instead of trying to sound like Bach, he literally took Bach's source material and dolled it up in a different way. But I feel like there's equal credit to that as well. As far as the importance of trying to sound like somebody else or retain that different artist feeling.
if you hadn't told me that was all him doing that specific thing, it completely gels with the rest of the album. Like, it doesn't sound like it sticks out or anything, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the beauty, I think, of our union in that musical sense, is that we share a lot of the same brain. Like, a lot of our inclinations are just the same.
Sure.
And where they diverge, that's what I think the most interesting points are. From the inside, it's super. I love listening to your perspective on that, because I just couldn't agree more.
There's all this stuff, you're infusing. What'd you say? You're infusing classical and electronic, I guess, is the sort of like one sentence pitch for what your kind of sound is. You're providing this like space for people to feel things, you know, and it absolutely could be in a video game, and it should be, and you should hire Alexa in Spaced Out Studio for your project if you want good music like this. Go and listen to it. It's very good. I want to make sure, I'm just scanning my notes here. I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. I missed so much. I missed like half of it. We could have a whole other episode.
Let's do it. I'm here.
Let's just try to quickly cram some stuff in. So
you got it.
This game does not exist.
Yes.
Is that started as an academic project?
Yeah, that's actually the culminating project for my master's degree.
Jared Varney from episode 7, he did these, he partnered with this artist, and this is after school and stuff. This is a guy I went to school with. He's a drummer. He is badass. He did something similar where he partnered with this 3D artist. They did these video game concept albums based on, like, the guy would make like a world map. Jared would make themes for the different areas of the map.
That's so awesome.
It's similar. Yeah, I love it. And it's similar. He took this hypothetical thing and created art around it, and it just to kind of like, look what I can do if I'm given an aesthetic to adhere to or whatever. And you did the exact same thing. You took hypothetical video games and you wrote entire albums around them. So and this is during your master's degree. So you did a AAA action. I wrote them down. AAA action adventure game, a mystery game. Yeah, you didn't just do one like, oh, here's an album I'm gonna do. You did like what, 5 albums?
5 or 6 mini albums, I think.
Yeah. But you did a AAA action adventure game, a mystery game, an indie farming simulator, a tactical shooter, what you called a pixelated heartbreaker, which is, there you go, there's Celeste, this emotional indie game kind of thing, and a space explorer. So you have, and this is all on your website, Thay-nohs.com. Did you start with like, oh, I'll do 3, and then it ended up being 6, or was it like always, I'm going to do this monumental project?
Yeah. Actually, so what you're looking at is about 20% of what I wanted to do for this project.
Oh my God.
I know. I am nothing if not ambitious, or maybe a little stupid, one of the two. But
they occupy the same part of your brain, I think. But,
right.
One
it's
does
a blurry
more for
line.
you than other. Yeah.
So what I wanted to do, Michael, is I wanted to develop what I called a pseudo game, because I actually wanted to explore Unity implementation in this project. So what I was going to do was design a Unity game where it was all space themed, and so each quote unquote level was going to be it's kind of meta, but like each level would have been like its own little game with a mini biome, and when you clicked on things, like I would only have like click triggers, right? Like there was no movement or anything like that. Like
simple,
that's beyond my scope.
Yeah.
But I had set up my Unity with a plugin called Fungus, which is a very unfortunate name for a very cool product. It's free, it's phenomenal, and it really let me actually get into Unity in a way I don't think I would have been able to otherwise. Unity and Fungus and Fmod actually had a little relationship, so I wanted all of that to happen, right? I wanted it to be 9 different types of games. 9. And 9. I wanted it and I wanted each of those to have a couple different tracks and all this. But what had happened was, I started teaching at my community college gig during my first year of my master's program. I had to actually file for like educational equivalency, because technically I wasn't qualified for the position, but I was only a thesis project away. Right?
Right, yeah.
And the idea was that I would finish my thesis project, get my master's, and skedaddle and be a working professional. But I severely underestimated how difficult that was going to be, being a first-year adjunct and a master's, candidate and a freelance teacher on the side, and. So, all this to say, it didn't work out exactly the way that I had intended, but that's kind of like, I think the serendipity is that the product is something that I'm very fond of. Of course, I look at it as something that like I would like to improve upon, but luckily, we can talk about it, right? Our future endeavor with
yeah.
these. Cool.
I hope so. If Jeremy yells at me, I'll just edit it out and
we'll just censor
republish.
It. Yeah. But this sparked an idea with Jeremy and myself for an entire series of albums called This Game Does Not Exist. And instead of having it just be my brainchild, we're having an artist collective, of which you are a part of, and so many other incredible artists are going to be a part of as well. Sean, of course, included, among others that I haven't gotten to meet yet. And so we're really excited to sort of explore this idea of making music for games that don't necessarily exist. I will say each of the games that I did make, I wrote an entire like story and plot for, at least to some extent.
You absolutely did. And this is all on our website. Like, I'm looking at it right now. You've named the games, you have a plot, but it's like a practical thing. You have like menu music, you have boss music, you have like all the things that you could literally almost take these tracks and make them non-linear, put them in a game tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, thank you.
No, it's great, and it's great. It's just like I'm astounded. I found this. I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was a project before the Bad Self thing, because like that's where I had known this game does not exist. It's just been this thing. Oh, that Alexa had blah, blah, blah. And then I went on your website and I'm like, oh, she wrote 6 albums and like there's this whole game design behind each one of them. It's crazy. Yeah, very, very intimidating amount of work that you've done here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's still surreal, honestly. Like calling myself an internationally signed artist is surreal.
Beautiful.
And the fact that it's such an honor to occupy that space, with Jeremy, with you, with Sean. It's just like, it makes me so happy.
That's what I wanted to say. It's just like I feel like I just wandered into a room and they were like, yeah, okay, come on in. You're this one of us, because I'm like, I have one track on what I think the release dates changed, but the 2 that are coming out are Happy Place and Dark Future.
Yeah.
So it'll be This Game Does Not Exist : Dark Future and Happy Place, but I contributed one. I don't think I contributed to Happy Place, but I did one track for the Dark Future one, and it's just very cool to be able to be alongside all these people.
Well, likewise. I'm so fortunate. It couldn't have gone better, and that's something I really appreciate about Bad Self is what you just mentioned, that sort of community space.
Yes.
Feeling like I can talk to everybody, like I talk to you, is an absolute fortune. It's such a lucky thing because I've definitely been in rooms where it doesn't feel that way.
Yes.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And like we've all been a part of our share of failed projects and what I've found. And even honestly, like even if it's like you're working on something that doesn't really go anywhere, but you're working with people that like care about it, but it just doesn't work out, that's still different. But like we worked on this project that like went really well and like we're all really proud of, and like we kind of like kept up with each other, and it's just really good. Like, so I guess young people listening to this, don't if you find people that you get along with, man, just keep in touch with them,
Totally.
Did you want to talk about, you have the Space Cadet Academy, did you want to talk about that at all?
I can say that it's still in development. The date that's on the website is a little vestigial. I probably have to kick it out to later in this upcoming year, but I will say that I'm very, very excited for what we're going to do with it.
Kind of based around just learning music in general, or is it like more piano based? Or
I think it's actually targeting core musicianship principles in a way that I have been using in my classroom and developing in my classroom that I want to make more accessible, both for the people inside my classroom, like have more references for them to look at more regularly. But also, when you look up this stuff, it seems like there's a void out there, like a vacuum. If you look up your training principles and musicianship, it feels a little stale. Sure. And it's so unfortunate. I think it's really rich. I think it's really exciting. I think it can be a lot more fun than the current search bar gives credit for.
Sure.
So that's the goal of Space Cadet Academy, is to all ages, accessible, a little bit of a boot camp, but not entirely. You know, just something to get those core tenets really down.
So that's called Space Cadet Academy. We're anticipating that. You could find all this stuff on spacedOutstudios.co, not com. Co.
Not com.
Okay. All right.
It was a tough battle out there for the domains.
Yeah. There's links on her website, alexathaynohs.com. First of all, you have two of the best Twitter names ever. You have, for Spaced Out Studios, you have @SpacedOutStuds.
Yeah.
Which is short for studios, but you're also studs, so, whatever.
Yeah, what can we say?
Describing you as a stud, it just makes me laugh.
Hell yeah.
And then your personal Twitter is Tiny Thay-nohs.
Yes.
And then, of course, alexathaynohs.com. Go and listen to The Little Bookshelf. It's awesome. Hire Alexa for many projects, all the projects. And also Sean Ettlin of Spaced Out Studios. So anything you wanted to plug before we kind of sign off, stop recording?
Oh, man. If I could plug any one additional thing, it would for sure be just Bad Self Media, who we've talked about a lot during this podcast. You can find it at, let me make sure I've got my cool business card here, badselfmusic.com.
You got a business card? I didn't get a business card. No, you did a lot more work for him, though.
Actually, what's really funny
set up his Discord.
I printed the business cards for Bad Self for GDC, so it doesn't have my name on it,
nice.
I promise. It's just the Bad Self business card. I just happen to have one on my desk, so at Bad Self Media on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. And of course, The Little Bookshelf was published by Monochrome Motif Records, which you can find at monochromemotif.com.
And then, final thing, I was going to just let you choose. It would be hard for me to choose one that I like the most from The Little Bookshelf, but I wanted to see maybe like the post-roll. We could just play one at the end.
Oh my gosh. I think, you know what, honestly, Departure, I feel like
Departure.
is fitting
Hey,
both
perfect.
in style and in context.
That's it. Departure. All right.
All right, that is the episode. Go and check out the show notes for links to all the things, Alexa's website and Twitter, Spaced Out Studios website and Twitter, Bad Self Media, Monochrome Motif Records, and Alexa's upcoming Space Cadet Academy project. All right, that's it. I leave you to bask in the warmth of Departure, a track from The Little Bookshelf from Spaced Out Studios. I am going to take this steampunk bicycle to episode 14. Farewell!
You know, if it's powered by steam, then why am I pedaling? Doesn't make any sense.